A routine flight from Chicago to New York is about to become the stage for a life-altering confrontation. For one flight attendant, it's the day his arrogance will cost him everything. For a particular passenger, it's a painful reminder of why she took her new job in the first place. While this specific story is a dramatization, it reflects a harsh reality many people face all too often. Real-life incidents of racial bias on flights are unfortunately common, sparking outrage and calls for accountability. This is a story about prejudice, power, and the moment a man who thought he was in charge discovers he just humiliated the woman who signs his paychecks. It's about what happens when that call for accountability is answered instantly, at 30,000 feet. A flight attendant told a black woman she didn't belong in first class. He was about to have the worst day of his life when she calmly handed him her business card. It read, Imani Vance, CEO, Global Horizon Airlines. Section 1, the setup. The first-class cabin of Global Horizon Airlines Flight 752 hummed with anticipation. Passengers settled into their plush leather seats, the scent of fresh coffee in the air. Among them was Imani Vance, a woman who, at first glance, seemed completely ordinary. Dressed in comfy gray trousers, a simple black top, and understated flats, she blended right in. No designer logos, no flashy jewelry, just the quiet confidence of a woman comfortable in her own skin. You might have guessed she was a teacher on summer break or a writer heading to a conference. No one would have guessed she'd just been appointed the new CEO of the very airline they were flying, and Imani was traveling incognito for a reason. For weeks, her desk had been flooded with concerning reports, customer complaints detailing subtle but persistent patterns of discrimination. Passengers of color were being overlooked, their upgrades questioned, and treated with a suspicion their white counterparts never faced. These weren't just a few isolated incidents, they were symptoms of a sickness in the company culture she'd been hired to fix. Imani knew she couldn't understand the problem from spreadsheets and internal reviews. She had to see it for herself. She slid her worn leather tote bag under the seat in front of her, waving off the pre-flight champagne. Her seat was 2A, a window seat she'd booked and paid for with her own credit card. As she settled in, she watched the other first-class passengers board. A businessman in a crisp suit got a warm, deferential welcome from the lead flight attendant. A young, giggling couple took their seats behind Kevin. Kevin was the lead flight attendant, a man in his late 40s with a perfect haircut and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He carried himself with an air of self-importance, like the first-class cabin was his personal kingdom. He'd been with Global Horizon for nearly 20 years, and in his mind, he was the gatekeeper, the one who decided who belonged and who didn't. His judgment was swift, shallow, and often laced with prejudice. He moved through the aisle with a clipboard, his eyes scanning the passengers. His gaze fell on Imani and lingered just a little too long. His smile tightened. He saw her simple clothes, her natural hair styled in elegant locks, and zero signs of obvious wealth. In his narrow world, she didn't fit the profile. He walked past her, served the man in the suit, and then circled back, stopping right in front of her seat. "Ma'am," he began, his voice dripping with condescension, "I believe you might be in the wrong section. The economy cabin is toward the back of the plane." Imani looked up from her book, her expression calm. "I believe I'm in the right seat," she said, her voice even and steady. "Seat 2A. Kevin let out a short, disbelieving laugh. "I'm sure it's an honest mistake, but this is the first-class cabin. Perhaps you misread your boarding pass." He didn't offer to look at her pass. He didn't ask for clarification. He just assumed. He'd already decided she was guilty. Imani held his gaze, the quiet power in her eyes unwavering. "There's no mistake," she repeated calmly. "This is my seat." A younger flight attendant, Chloe, overheard the exchange from the galley. A flicker of concern crossed her face. She knew Kevin's reputation. She'd seen him do this before, challenging passengers he decided weren't worthy of a premium seat. Kevin's condescension was quickly turning to irritation. This woman wasn't backing down. She wasn't getting flustered or apologetic like he expected. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dropping into a more forceful tone, "I'm going to have to ask you to show me your boarding pass. We need to clear this up before takeoff." He said it loudly enough for the other passengers to hear, turning a simple verification into a public spectacle. He was flagging her as a problem. The injustice had begun, and Imani Vance, the woman in charge of his entire company, felt the familiar, weary sting of it. But she remained perfectly still. Suddenly, the relaxed vibe of the first-class cabin was gone. Heads turned. The businessman across the aisle lowered his newspaper with a curious smirk. The couple behind Imani stopped laughing and started whispering. This wasn't a private chat anymore, it was a performance, and Kevin had cast Imani as the villain. Imani reached into her tote bag, her movements slow and deliberate. She pulled up her digital boarding pass on her phone and held it out for him. Her name, Imani Vance, and the seat, 2A, were clearly displayed. Kevin barely glanced at it. He was too committed to his story. "Those can be faked," he said dismissively. "I need to see a printed pass and a photo ID. It's protocol." It was a blatant lie. That wasn't the protocol, and he knew it. He was just inventing rules to back up his prejudice. The younger flight attendant, Chloe, shifted uncomfortably in the galley. She knew this was wrong. She started to step forward, maybe to intervene, but a sharp glare from Kevin froze her in place. He was the senior attendant, challenging him was a risky move. Imani's composure was unshakable. "My ID is in my bag," she said, her voice still level, "but I can assure you, this ticket is valid." "Everyone says that," Kevin shot back, his voice dripping with sarcasm. He crossed his arms, leaning in to intimidate her. "Ma'am, we have a full flight, and we need the person who actually paid for this seat to sit down. Now, are you going to move, or am I going to have to call the captain and airport security to have you removed?" The threat hung in the air, ugly and loud. "Removed." The word echoed in the now silent cabin. An older woman in seat 3B, wearing a string of pearls, decided to chime in, aiming a look of stern disapproval at Imani. "For heaven's sake," she said, "just listen to the man, dear. If you've made a mistake, admit it. Don't hold up the flight for everyone." Her comment was like gasoline on Kevin's fire. He felt validated. "You see," he said to Imani, gesturing to the other passenger. "You're disrupting the boarding process. I'm giving you one final chance to collect your things and move to the back of the plane." He wasn't asking anymore. He was commanding. His face was flushed with a sense of righteous authority. He truly believed he was protecting his first-class kingdom. This was the moment Imani had dreaded but also expected. She'd read the reports, but feeling the full weight of the humiliation herself was different. It was a cold, heavy feeling in the pit of her stomach. She thought of her father, a mechanic who worked 2 jobs so she could get the education he never had, who always told her to hold her head high, no matter who looked down on her. She had seen enough. The experiment was over. Now, it was time for the lesson. She looked past Kevin's smug face and spoke with a calm authority that seemed to come from deep within her. "No," she said, her voice soft but resonating with absolute finality. Kevin's face contorted with rage. "I will not be moving." He'd been publicly defied. He pulled out his staff communication device. "This is Kevin in first class. I have a non-compliant passenger in 2A refusing to leave. Requesting the captain's presence. We may need ground security." He had escalated it to the highest level to make an example of her. He stood back, a triumphant sneer on his lips, waiting for the authorities to arrive and prove him right. He had no idea the highest authority on that plane was sitting right in front of him. Section 3, The Reveal and Resolution. The captain, a seasoned pilot named David Chen with a reputation for no-nonsense problem-solving, emerged from the cockpit. He walked down the aisle, his expression serious as he took in the scene, an enraged flight attendant, a nervous junior attendant, and a black woman sitting calmly by the window. "What's the situation, Kevin?" Captain Chen asked, his voice low and professional. "Captain," Kevin said, beaming with self-importance, "this woman is refusing to vacate a first-class seat. She has no valid pass and is causing a disturbance. I've asked her repeatedly to move, but she refuses. I think she needs to be removed from the flight." Captain Chen turned to Imani. He noted her calm posture, which didn't quite match Kevin's frantic description. "Ma'am," the captain said respectfully, "I'm Captain Chen. Can I please see your ticket and ID so we can sort this out?" This was the moment. Theatrics were over. Imani slowly reached into her tote bag again. But she didn't pull out her driver's license. Instead, she retrieved a slim, elegant business card holder. She took out a single card and handed it not to Kevin, but directly to Captain Chen. The captain took the card. He glanced at it, and his eyes widened. He read it again, a look of pure disbelief washing over his face. He looked from the card to Imani, then back to the card. The name was Imani Vance. The title printed beneath it was, Chief Executive Officer, Global Horizon Airlines. A heavy silence fell over the cabin. Kevin, still standing with his arms crossed, saw the captain's expression change from concern to shock. "What is it, Captain?" "Some fake ID?" he asked impatiently. Captain Chen slowly lifted his head and locked eyes with Kevin. He held up the business card. "This," he said, his voice barely a whisper, the words hit Kevin like a punch to the gut. "She's our new CEO." The color drained from his face. His triumphant sneer dissolved into a slack-jawed mask of pure terror. His mind frantically replayed the last 10 minutes. The condescension. The threats. The economy cabin is where you belong. He felt a cold dread so intense he thought he might be sick. He looked at Imani, truly looked at her for the first time, and saw the most powerful person in the entire company. Imani finally spoke, her voice still quiet but now carrying an undeniable and crushing authority. "Kevin," she said, "you've just given me a textbook demonstration of the exact problem I was hired to fix." She then turned to the stunned captain. "Captain Chen, thank you for your professionalism. This is now an internal corporate issue. There's no need for security." She looked directly at Kevin, her eyes cold as steel. "You are relieved of your duties for this flight. Find a seat in the back of the economy cabin. We will discuss your future with Global Horizon when we land. An HR representative will be there to meet you." It wasn't a shout. It wasn't a dramatic firing. It was something far more chilling, a calm, clinical dismantling of his career. The humiliation he tried to inflict on her had been returned to him 1,000-fold. Chloe, the junior attendant, watched in stunned silence. The other passengers, including the woman in 3B, just stared, their faces a mix of shock and dawning shame. Kevin stood frozen as his world collapsed. He opened his mouth to apologize or beg, but no words came. He just nodded numbly, the weight of his actions finally crashing down. Defeated and broken, he turned and began the long walk of shame down the aisle, past the staring faces, to find an empty seat at the very back of the plane. Conclusion: when Flight 752 landed at JFK, 2 HR representatives were waiting at the gate. Kevin was escorted off the plane before anyone else. He was officially terminated the next day for gross misconduct and violating the company's anti-discrimination policies. His 20-year career was over. Imani later addressed the flight crew, announcing an immediate, company-wide overhaul of all anti-bias and sensitivity training. The incident on Flight 752, she explained, would become a case study in their new training modules, a permanent reminder of what happens when prejudice goes unchecked. These kinds of real-world incidents are often the catalyst for systemic reform, leading to changes in corporate policy and training. This story highlights a truth that society too often forgets: a person's worth isn't determined by their clothes, their skin color, or their seat on a plane. True power isn't about asserting dominance, it's found in dignity, composure, and the quiet strength to demand respect. Imani Vance didn't need to raise her voice. Her success was the ultimate rebuke to the bigotry she faced. It's a reminder that karma, especially at 30,000 feet, can be swift, and justice is always worth the fight. What did you think of this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to see more stories of karma and justice, don't forget to like and subscribe for more content that makes you think.